How can one cruel joke at a party turn into the moment my husband stopped being the victim and became the judge? What does it feel like to be handed legal papers, divorce, custody, and everything else by the man I thought I controlled? This is how the night I mocked my husband in front of everyone became the start of my lawful downfall. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The downtown restaurant buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses as our friend group celebrated Nina's promotion. I felt electric that night, wearing my new red dress that hugged all the right curves. At 34, I still turned heads, and I knew it. The wine had loosened my tongue, and I was holding court at our table, regaling everyone with stories from my marketing job. So then the client says, "Can you make the logo pop more?" I gestured dramatically, causing Mark and Jess to burst into laughter. And I'm thinking, what does that even mean? Make it jump off the screen like a jack-in-the-box. Owen sat beside me, quietly sipping his beer. My husband of 8 years looked tired, his brown hair showing more grey than I remembered. At 36, he'd settled into that comfortable teacher look, cardigan, khakis, and sensible shoes. While I was out networking and climbing the corporate ladder, he spent his days with high school math students, coming home with stories about teenagers who couldn't calculate tips. "Dance with me, babe," I said, grabbing his arm as the restaurant's sound system played something upbeat. "I'm good here," Owen replied, not even looking up from his phone. "You go ahead." The rejection stung, especially in front of our friends. I felt my cheeks flush, but not from the wine this time. "Come on, don't be such an old wrinkled prune," I laughed, making sure my voice carried across the table. "Live a little," Nina snorted with laughter. "Alethea, you're terrible." "I'm serious." I stood up, swaying slightly. "Look at him, sitting there like someone's grandfather. When did you get so boring, Owen?" My brother Tristan, who'd been scrolling through his phone, looked up and chuckled. "She's got a point, man. When's the last time you did anything spontaneous?" Owen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm fine where I am." "See?" I threw my hands up. "This is what I live with. Mr. Excitement over here." The table erupted in laughter again, and I felt that familiar rush of being the center of attention. My mother Evelyn, who'd been unusually quiet, shot me a warning look. "Alethea, maybe what? Maybe I should pretend my husband isn't turning into a fossil before my eyes." I was on a roll now, feeding off the group's energy. I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm married to my grandfather. Frank, Owen's father, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The older man had never been my biggest fan, and I could see disapproval written all over his weathered face. Owen stood abruptly. "I think I'll head home." "Oh, come on," I grabbed his sleeve. "I'm just kidding around. Don't be so sensitive." He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his expression made my stomach flutter with unease. "I know exactly what you're doing, Alethea." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Have a good time," he said simply, pulling on his jacket. "I'll see you at home." As he walked away, I forced a laugh. "See what I mean? Drama queen." But the mood at the table had shifted. Mark cleared his throat awkwardly, and Jess suddenly became very interested in her phone. Even Tristan looked uncomfortable. "He'll get over it," I said, downing the rest of my wine. "He always does." The party continued, but something felt off. Frank left shortly after Owen, mumbling something about an early morning. Mom kept giving me those looks, the ones that said we'd be having a conversation later. Only Nina and a few others seemed genuinely amused by the whole thing. By the time I got home around midnight, the apartment was dark. Owen was already in bed, turned away from my side. I slipped in beside him, expecting him to roll over and maybe discuss what had happened. Instead, he remained perfectly still. "Owen," I whispered. Nothing. I lay there in the darkness, replaying the evening. Had I gone too far? No, I decided. He was being overly sensitive. It was just harmless fun between friends. He needed to learn to laugh at himself. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The coldness radiating from his side of the bed felt different somehow. Not hurt, but resolved. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Owen moving around the kitchen. For a moment, I felt relieved. Maybe he was over last night's drama. I padded downstairs in my robe, ready to smooth things over with my usual charm. "Morning, honey," I said brightly, reaching for the coffee pot. Owen was already dressed for work, reading something on his tablet. He looked up briefly, nodded, then returned to his screen. "About last night," I began. "What about it?" His tone was neutral, almost businesslike. "I think you might have overreacted a little. I was just having fun with our friends." Owen set down his tablet and looked at me directly. "You called me a wrinkled prune in front of everyone we know." It was a joke, I laughed, but it sounded forced even to my ears. "Since when can't we joke around?" "Is that what we're calling it?" There was something different about his voice. Usually, when we fought, Owen got emotional, hurt, angry, defensive. This calm detachment was new and unsettling. "You're being way too sensitive about this," I said, pouring my coffee. Everyone was laughing. Even Tristan thought it was funny. I'm sure he did. Our 6-year-old daughter Sophie bounced into the kitchen, her blonde hair a mess from sleep. "Daddy, can you help me with my backpack?" Owen's entire demeanor changed as he knelt down to her level. "Of course, sweetheart. What do you need?" As he helped Sophie organize her school things, I noticed how gentle and patient he was with her. The contrast to how he'd just been speaking to me was stark. "Daddy, why did you leave the party early last night?" Sophie asked innocently. I jumped in before Owen could answer. "Daddy was just tired, honey. Sometimes grown-ups get sleepy at parties." Owen glanced at me, then back at Sophie. That's right, I was tired. But Sophie, with that uncanny intuition children have, seemed to sense the tension. She looked between us uncertainly before hugging Owen's leg. After Owen left for work and Sophie for school, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos from last night. There I was, animated and laughing, while Owen sat in the background looking increasingly uncomfortable. I texted Nina. "Thanks for a fun night. Sorry Owen was being such a stick in the mud." Her response came quickly. "LOL. He did seem pretty upset when he left. Everything okay?" Instead of answering directly, I posted a vague status update. Some people just can't handle a little teasing. Life's too short to be so serious all the time. The likes and comments started rolling in immediately. Most were supportive, agreeing that people needed to lighten up. But a few made me pause. My mum texted, "We need to talk. That wasn't okay last night." I rolled my eyes and deleted the message without responding. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Milo Chan, a guy who worked in my building. We'd been flirting harmlessly for months. Nothing serious, just some fun conversation to break up the workday monotony. "Heard you had quite the night. Your Instagram stories were entertaining." I smiled as I typed back, just dealing with some immaturity at home. Some people can't handle a confident woman. "His loss. Want to grab coffee later? You sound like you could use someone who appreciates your sense of humor." The invitation sent a little thrill through me. Why not? 2 p.m. at that place on 5th Street. When Owen came home that evening, I was in the study, supposedly working on a presentation. He knocked on the doorframe. "Can I use the computer for a bit?" "Sure, I'm almost done." I saved my work and stood up. "How was your day?" "Fine." That was it. No elaboration, no questions about my day. As I passed him, I noticed he was carrying a manila folder I didn't recognize. "What's that?" "Just some paperwork." I lingered in the doorway, watching as he sat down and opened the folder. From what I could see, it looked like he was organizing documents, bank statements maybe, insurance papers. Owen, are you planning something I should know about? He looked up, and again I saw that strange calm in his eyes. Just getting organized. You know how I am about keeping good records. It was true. Owen had always been meticulous about paperwork, taxes, household finances, but something about this felt different. We should probably talk about last night, I said. What's there to talk about? You made your feelings clear. My feelings? Owen, it was a joke. You're acting like I committed some terrible crime. He turned back to his papers. I'm not acting like anything, Alethea. I'm just taking care of some things that need to be taken care of. The dismissal stung. I was used to being able to charm my way out of conflicts with Owen. His usual pattern was to get upset. We'd argue, I'd apologize in my way, and things would go back to normal. This cold efficiency was completely foreign. That night, as we lay in bed, I tried once more. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings last night. I didn't mean anything by it. I know you didn't, he said quietly. So we're okay. We're fine, Alethea. But we weren't fine. I could feel it in the space between us, in the way he'd started saying my name, like it was just a word instead of an endearment. Something had changed, and I had the sinking feeling that my harmless joke had been anything but harmless. The next few weeks brought a subtle but undeniable shift in our household dynamics. Owen maintained his polite distance, going through the motions of family life while somehow being completely absent from our marriage. He helped Sophie with homework, handled his share of chores, and made pleasant conversation at dinner. But the warmth, the intimacy, the partnership we'd built over 8 years, all of it had evaporated. My coffee dates with Milo became a regular thing. He was everything Owen wasn't: spontaneous, flirtatious, full of energy. At 31, he still had that boyish charm that made me feel young and desirable again. You deserve someone who appreciates your spirit, he said during one of our afternoon meetings. Some guys just can't handle a woman with personality. I found myself agreeing, sharing more details about my marriage than I probably should have. Milo was a good listener, always ready with validation and sympathy. It's not like anything's happening, I told myself. We're just friends. But the texts were becoming more frequent, more intimate. When Owen worked late at school, I found myself looking forward to Milo's messages. The first real warning sign came at work. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. Alethea, I need to address something with you, she said, closing the door behind us. My stomach dropped. What's up? There's been some talk around the office about you and Milo from the accounting firm downstairs. I'm not one for gossip, but when it starts affecting workplace dynamics, it becomes my concern. Heat flooded my face. Patricia, I don't know what people are saying, but I'm not asking for details. I'm just reminding you that we maintain certain professional standards here. Whatever your personal situation is, please keep it personal. The conversation lasted only 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. As I walked back to my desk, I could feel eyes on me. Had people really been talking? And if so, what were they saying? That evening, Tristan called while I was making dinner. Hey sis, we need to talk. About what? I saw some pictures on Instagram. You and some guy I don't recognize, multiple times this week. My heart raced. Tristan, you're being ridiculous. He's just a friend from work. Does Owen know about this friend? There's nothing to know. God, when did everyone become so paranoid? When you started posting pictures with another man while complaining about your husband online. The accusation hung in the air. I haven't been complaining. Really? Because your posts lately have been pretty clear about how unappreciated you feel at home. After I hung up, I scrolled through my recent social media activity. Had I been that obvious? Looking at it objectively, I could see how someone might get the wrong impression. But that wasn't my fault. People were just reading too much into innocent friendships. Sophie's behavior was changing too. She'd always been a chatty, affectionate kid, but lately, she'd become withdrawn. I found her in her room one afternoon, drawing with intense concentration. What are you making, sweetheart? She held up the paper. It was a family picture, but something was off about it. She'd drawn herself in the middle, Owen on one side, and me far on the other side, separated by what looked like a wall. That's interesting, I said carefully. Why is Mommy over there? Sophie shrugged. That's just where you go now. The simple statement hit me harder than any accusation could have. Through a 6-year-old's eyes, I was already gone. That weekend, we hosted a family dinner. Mom, Frank, Tristan, and a few others came over for what was supposed to be a pleasant evening. Instead, it became an exercise in barely concealed tension. Owen was his usual helpful self, preparing food and making sure everyone was comfortable. But I noticed he'd started carrying that manila folder with him, even keeping it nearby during dinner. What's in the mystery folder, Owen? Tristan asked, trying to lighten the mood. Just some household paperwork, Owen replied, trying to get everything organized. Mom shot me a look. We still hadn't had the conversation she'd mentioned, and I could tell she was losing patience with my avoidance. Owen's always been so good with details, Frank said proudly. Taught him early that documentation is important for everything. Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. Frank was a retired paralegal who'd worked for a family law firm for 30 years. He knew the importance of documentation better than most. As the evening wore on, I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. Conversations happened around me, but I wasn't really part of them. Even Sophie seemed more interested in staying close to Owen than to me. When everyone was leaving, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. We need to talk, now. Mom, not tonight. Yes, tonight. Alethea, what are you doing? I don't know what you mean. The disrespect toward Owen, the social media posts, the rumors about some other man. What are you thinking? There are no rumors. People are just jealous and bored. Mom studied my face for a long moment. You're lying to yourself, and it's going to destroy your family. My family is fine. Your daughter drew a picture of you separated from everyone else. Your husband barely looks at you. Your brother is worried sick. Nothing about this is fine. After everyone left, I confronted Owen directly. Have you been talking to people about our marriage? He looked up from loading the dishwasher. What do you mean? Everyone's acting weird around me, like they know something I don't. I haven't talked to anyone about our marriage, Alethea. Then why does it feel like everyone's taking sides? Owen dried his hands and turned to face me. Maybe because there are sides now. The simple statement sent a chill through me. What's that supposed to mean? It means things have changed, and people notice when things change. Changed how? You tell me. You're the one who's been spending your afternoons with Milo-chan. The blood drained from my face. How do you... I'm not stupid, Alethea, and neither is anyone else. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Owen slept peacefully beside me, but I felt like I was drowning. How had things gotten so complicated? All I'd done was make a joke and have some coffee with a friend. Why was everyone acting like I'd committed some terrible betrayal? But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The joke at the party had been cruel. The coffee dates with Milo had crossed lines I wasn't ready to acknowledge. And the social media posts had painted a picture of my marriage that invited speculation and judgment. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I was the one in the wrong. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at Nina's housewarming party. I'd been looking forward to it all week, hoping to recapture some of the fun and attention I'd enjoyed at the restaurant. Instead, it became the night everything fell apart. Most of our friend group was there: Nina, Mark, Jess, and several others from our usual crowd. I'd dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel confident and attractive. Milo couldn't come, but we'd been texting throughout the day. At first, everything seemed normal. People were drinking, laughing, catching up on gossip. But I gradually became aware of a shift in how people were interacting with me. Conversations seemed to pause when I approached. Smiles felt forced. Even Nina, who'd always been one of my closest friends, seemed distant. Great party, I told her, trying to break the ice. Thanks, I'm glad you could make it. There was something in her tone that made me uncomfortable. Is everything okay? Nina glanced around the room, then pulled me aside. Alethea, can we talk privately? We went to her bedroom, away from the party noise. Nina closed the door and turned to face me with an expression I'd never seen before. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. My heart started racing. Okay. Are you having an affair? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? No. Why would you ask that? Because Mark saw you with some guy last Tuesday at that hotel bar downtown. And Jess said her cousin who works in your building has been talking about you and someone from the accounting firm. I felt trapped, cornered. People need to mind their own business. I'm allowed to have friends. Friends don't usually hold hands in hotel bars, Alethea. The accusation hung between us. I wanted to deny it, but the memory of that afternoon with Milo was too fresh. We had been holding hands, and yes, it had felt like more than friendship. It's not what you think, I said weakly. Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're cheating on Owen while publicly humiliating him. I'm not humiliating anyone, and I'm not cheating. Really? Then why don't we go ask Owen what he thinks? My stomach dropped. Owen's here. He's in the living room, has been for about an hour. I followed Nina back to the party with my heart pounding. Sure enough, there was Owen, standing by the kitchen counter talking quietly with Mark and Frank. He looked up when I entered the room, and our eyes met across the crowded space. The conversation in the room seemed to dim as people became aware of the tension. I could feel everyone watching us, waiting to see what would happen. Owen, I said, walking over to him, I didn't know you were coming. Nina invited both of us, he said simply. Can we talk? About what? The question was loud enough for nearby people to hear. I glanced around nervously, aware that we had an audience. Maybe somewhere private. I think we're past private conversations, don't you? There was something in his tone that made my skin crawl. This wasn't the hurt, defensive Owen I was used to. This was someone else entirely. Someone calm and controlled and completely done with me. Owen, please what, Alethea? Please pretend everything's fine. Please keep playing along while you make a fool of me. The room had gone completely quiet now. Even the music seemed muted. I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been meeting Milo Chan 3 times a week for the past month. I know you held hands with him at the Marriott bar last Tuesday. I know you've been telling people our marriage is a joke and that I'm boring and controlling. Each statement was delivered in that same calm, factual tone. No anger, no emotion, just facts. That's not... I know you told him our sex life was disappointing and that you felt trapped. I know you've been planning to leave me, but you're worried about the financial implications. The room was spinning. How could he possibly know about those conversations? They'd been private, just between Milo and me. How? How do I know? Owen pulled out his phone. Because Milo's been sharing screenshots with his friends. And one of his friends happens to be married to someone who works at Sophie's school. The humiliation was crushing. Not only had my private conversations been exposed, but they'd been spread around like gossip. The intimate things I'd shared with Milo, things I'd never meant for anyone else to hear, were apparently common knowledge. You're lying, I said desperately. Owen held up his phone, showing me a screenshot of a text conversation. My words, my complaints about our marriage, my intimate confessions, all of it displayed on his screen. This is from last Thursday, he said. Would you like me to read it out loud? No. The word came out as a strangled cry. Or maybe this one from yesterday, where you told him you were planning to ask for a divorce after the holidays. I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me. Nina looked disgusted. Mark was shaking his head. Jess had her hand over her mouth in shock. Even people I barely knew were looking at me with judgment and pity. Owen, please don't do this here. Do what? Tell the truth? Isn't that what you wanted? Honesty? Authenticity? No more pretending? This isn't fair. Fair. For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. Was it fair when you called me a wrinkled prune in front of everyone? Was it fair when you started an affair and told your lover that I was a terrible husband? Was it fair when you made our daughter think her family was falling apart? The mention of Sophie broke something inside me. Don't bring her into this. She's already in this. She drew a picture of our family with you, separated from us. She asks me why Mommy has so many friends now. She's 6 years old, Alethea, and she already knows something's wrong. I was crying now, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. But instead of sympathy, I saw only cold judgment in the faces around me. I want to go home, I whispered. Then go, Owen said, but I won't be there. What do you mean? I mean I'm done. I've been staying at my dad's for the past week, while you've been texting Milo about how miserable I make you. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so wrapped up in my own drama that I hadn't even noticed my husband had moved out. Owen, wait. But he was already walking toward the door. Frank followed him, stopping only to look back at me with undisguised disappointment. As the door closed behind them, I found myself alone in a room full of people who had once been my friends. The silence was deafening. Nina was the first to speak. I think you should leave. Nina, please. You need to leave, now. I looked around the room one more time, hoping to find a friendly face, someone who might offer support or understanding. Instead, I saw only disgust and disappointment. As I gathered my things and headed for the door, I heard Mark say quietly, I can't believe she did that to him. And in front of everyone, Jess added, how could she be so cruel? I wanted to defend myself, to explain that things weren't as simple as they seemed, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I knew they were right. I had been cruel. I had been unfaithful. I had humiliated my husband and damaged my daughter and destroyed my marriage. And now, for the first time in my life, I was truly alone. The days following the party were a blur of humiliation and desperate attempts to salvage what remained of my life. I called in sick to work, unable to face the gossip and judgment I knew would be waiting for me. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, some from people offering support, but most expressing disappointment or cutting ties entirely. Milo, predictably, had gone silent. When I finally reached him, his response was brief and cold. I think we should stop seeing each other. This has gotten too complicated. Complicated? I laughed bitterly into the phone. You shared our private conversations with your friends. I never meant for it to get back to Owen, but honestly, Alethea, you were talking about leaving him anyway. I just helped speed up the process. The casual cruelty of his words was breathtaking. This man I'd thought cared about me, who'd listened to my problems and made me feel desired, had been treating our relationship like entertainment for his social circle. You used me, I said. We used each other. Don't pretend this was some great love story. After he hung up, I sat in my empty apartment. Owen had indeed moved out, taking only his personal belongings and leaving everything else untouched, and tried to process what my life had become. Sophie was staying with Frank for the week, something Owen had arranged without consulting me. When I called to speak with her, the conversation was stilted and painful. When are you and Daddy coming home? She asked. Soon, sweetheart. We're just working some things out. Is it because of your friend? The question stopped me cold. What friend? The one you text all the time. Daddy said you have a special friend. I closed my eyes, hating Owen for putting our daughter in the middle of this. But even as I felt the anger, I knew he was protecting her in the only way he could. It's complicated, baby, but Daddy and I both love you very much. I know, but I want us to live together again. Maybe we will. But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. My mother finally cornered me at the apartment on Thursday evening, letting herself in with the spare key I'd forgotten she had. We're going to talk, she announced, setting down her purse and facing me with an expression I remembered from my teenage years. "Mom, I really can't handle a lecture right now." "Too bad, because you're going to get one." She sat down across from me, her face stern but not unkind. "I raised you better than this, Alethea. Your father and I taught you about respect, about loyalty, about taking responsibility for your actions. What happened to that person?" "I made some mistakes." "Mistakes? You systematically destroyed your marriage while playing the victim. You humiliated a good man who's done nothing but love and support you for 8 years. You've confused and hurt your daughter. These aren't mistakes. This is a pattern of selfish, destructive behavior." The words hit harder, coming from my mother, than they had from anyone else. "I didn't mean for things to go this far," I said weakly. "But you did mean to have an emotional affair with another man. You did mean to mock Owen publicly. You did mean to share intimate details of your marriage with someone who was using you for entertainment. How do you know about—" "Because everyone knows, Alethea. The whole story is out there. And instead of taking responsibility, you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself." I started crying again, but Mom didn't soften. "Crying won't fix this. The question is, what are you going to do now?" "I don't know. Owen won't talk to me. My friends hate me. Even Sophie seems afraid of me." "Sophie isn't afraid of you. She's confused because her mother has been acting like a stranger. But it's not too late to start making better choices." "What kind of choices?" "Take responsibility. Stop making excuses. Stop blaming other people for the consequences of your actions. And figure out if you actually want to save your marriage or if you're just afraid of being alone." After Mum left, I spent the night thinking about her words. Did I want to save my marriage? Or was I just panicking because my exit strategy had blown up in my face? The honest answer was complicated. I did love Owen, but I'd also felt trapped by our routine, our predictable life. I'd wanted excitement, passion, the feeling of being desired, but I'd gone about it in the worst possible way. The next morning, I tried calling Owen. He didn't answer, but he texted back, "If you need to discuss Sophie or practical matters, we can talk. Otherwise, please contact my lawyer." Lawyer. The word sent a chill through me. I drove to his school that afternoon, waiting in the parking lot until he came out. When he saw me, his expression didn't change. Still that calm, resolved look that had replaced the hurt and anger I'd expected. "Alethea, what do you need?" "I need to talk to you. Really talk." "About what?" "About us. About fixing this." Owen leaned against his car, studying my face. "What exactly do you want to fix?" "Our marriage. Our family. I made terrible mistakes, but we can work through this." "Can we? Because from where I stand, you've made it pretty clear how you feel about our marriage." I was confused. I was feeling unappreciated and— "So you started an affair." "It wasn't really an affair." "What would you call it?" I struggled for words. It was emotional, but we never— Never what? Never held hands. Never talked about leaving me. Never shared intimate details of our marriage with him. Each question was like a knife twist. "I know I hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me, Alethea. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool to everyone we know. You damaged our daughter's sense of security. You destroyed 8 years of trust and partnership." "People make mistakes." "This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Multiple choices, made over weeks and months." I was crying again, but Owen remained unmoved. "What do you want me to say? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this if we both want to." "That's the problem," Owen said quietly. "I don't want to anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "I don't want to fix this. I don't want to go back to pretending everything's okay. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering when you'll decide I'm boring again." "Owen, please." "I've already filed the papers, Alethea. You'll be served next week." My legs nearly gave out. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I've documented everything. The affair, the public humiliation, The impact on Sophie. My lawyer says I have a strong case for primary custody. You can't take Sophie from me. I'm not taking her from you. I'm providing her with a stable home environment. You'll have visitation rights. This is insane. You're overreacting. For the first time, emotion flickered across Owen's face. Not hurt or anger, but something like pity. I'm not overreacting, Alethea. I'm finally reacting appropriately. I should have done this the night you called me a wrinkled prune in front of everyone. That was one comment. No, that was the moment I realized you had no respect for me. Everything that came after just confirmed it. He got in his car, rolling down the window for one final statement. The papers will be delivered Monday morning. I suggest you get a lawyer. As he drove away, I stood alone in the school parking lot, finally understanding that my actions had consequences I couldn't charm or manipulate my way out of. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to face the full weight of what I had done. Monday morning arrived with a knock at my door that I'd been dreading all weekend. The process server was professional but not unkind as he handed me the manila envelope that would officially end my marriage. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the papers that laid out Owen's case in devastating detail. Divorce petition, custody arrangement, financial settlement, asset division. Everything documented with the kind of meticulous precision that was so characteristically Owen. But it wasn't just the legal language that made my hands shake as I read. It was the evidence. Screenshots of my text conversations with Milo. Witness statements from the party where I'd humiliated Owen. Documentation of my social media posts disparaging our marriage. Photos of me with Milo that I didn't even remember being taken. Most damaging of all was a statement from Sophie's school counselor, noting changes in her behavior and artwork that suggested family instability. The drawing she'd made, the one with me separated from the family, was included as an exhibit. I called every lawyer I could find, but the consultations all went the same way. Yes, I could contest the divorce. No, I probably wouldn't win a custody battle. Yes, Owen's documentation was thorough and damaging. No, there wasn't much I could do to change the narrative at this point. Your husband has built an airtight case, one attorney told me bluntly. He's documented everything, gathered witness testimony, and demonstrated a pattern of behavior that courts take very seriously. Unless you have evidence of abuse or neglect on his part, you're looking at a settlement heavily weighted in his favor. But I'm her mother, I protested. Being a mother doesn't give you automatic rights when you've demonstrated poor judgment that affects the child's well-being. The next few weeks passed in a haze of legal meetings, failed attempts at reconciliation, and the gradual realization that my old life was truly over. Friends who had initially offered support began to distance themselves as more details of my affair became public. My work performance suffered to the point where Patricia called me in for another uncomfortable conversation about my future with the company. Even Tristan, who'd always been my ally, was struggling to maintain his support. I love you, sis, but I can't defend what you did, he told me during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. Owen's a good guy, and Sophie deserves stability. So I don't deserve consideration. I don't deserve forgiveness. You deserve consequences. There's a difference. The final hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November. I'd hired a lawyer who specialized in difficult divorces, hoping she could find some angle to improve my position. Instead, she spent most of our time together, preparing me for the reality of what was coming. The judge is going to see a clear pattern of behavior, she explained. Infidelity, public humiliation of your spouse, poor judgment regarding your child's emotional well-being. Your best bet is to accept the settlement and focus on rebuilding your relationship with your daughter. What about alimony? What about my rights to the house? Given the circumstances, you're lucky to get anything. Owen's lawyer could have pushed for a much harsher settlement. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, but it felt enormous as I sat at the defendant's table, watching Owen present his case. He was calm, factual, devastating. Every question was answered with documentation. Every claim was supported by evidence. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to explain my side, the loneliness, the feeling of being taken for granted, the gradual drift that had led to my poor choices. But even as I spoke, I could hear how weak my justification sounded. "Your Honor," I said finally, "I made mistakes. I hurt my husband and I confused my daughter. But I love my family, and I want the chance to make things right." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Voss, love is demonstrated through actions, not words. Your actions over the past several months have consistently prioritized your own desires over your family's well-being. While I appreciate that you now regret those choices, the damage has been done." She granted Owen everything he'd asked for. Primary custody of Sophie, with supervised visitation for me until I completed counseling. The house, since he'd be providing Sophie's primary residence. A minimal financial settlement that would require me to start over almost completely. As the gavel fell, I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, that had been breaking for weeks, but something deeper. The image I'd held of myself as a victim of circumstance, as someone who'd just made a few mistakes that had been blown out of proportion. Owen approached me as we left the courtroom. "Alethea," he said quietly. I looked up at him, this man I'd spent 8 years with, and saw a stranger. Not because he'd changed, but because I finally saw him clearly. Saw the kindness I'd taken for granted, the stability I'd mocked, the love I'd thrown away for the sake of excitement and validation. "I want you to know," he continued, "this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting Sophie and giving her the best chance at a stable childhood." "I know," I said, and for the first time in months I meant it. "You can still be a good mother to her, but you have to do the work." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "And Alethea, I hope you figure out what you're really looking for, because it was never about me being boring or our marriage being stale. It was about you not knowing who you are or what you actually want." As he walked away, I stood alone on the courthouse steps, holding the papers that officially ended my marriage. The November air was cold, and I realized I'd forgotten my coat. Such a small thing, but it felt symbolic somehow. I'd been so focused on the drama, the conflict, the legal battle, that I'd forgotten to take care of the basic details of my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "How did it go?" I typed back, "It's over. Owen got everything." "I'm sorry, honey. Do you want me to come over?" I looked around at the busy street, the people hurrying past with their own lives and problems, none of them knowing or caring about my personal catastrophe. "No," I typed. "I think I need to sit with this for a while." For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I wasn't going to run to someone else for comfort or validation. I wasn't going to post about it on social media or look for sympathy from friends. I wasn't going to blame Owen or Milo or anyone else for the choices I'd made. I was going to go home to my empty apartment, look at myself in the mirror, and finally take responsibility for the person I'd become. The woman who'd called her husband a wrinkled prune at a party, thinking it was funny. The woman who'd had an emotional affair and convinced herself it was harmless. The woman who'd prioritized her own desires over her daughter's well-being. The woman who'd lost everything because she'd never learned the difference between confidence and cruelty, between independence and selfishness, between wanting more and destroying what she had. As I walked down the courthouse steps, I realized that Owen had given me one final gift in his parting words, the truth about what this had really been about. It was never about him not being good enough. It was about me not knowing how to be better. And now, finally, I had no choice but to learn.